For more than 3,000 years, Jewish parents have performed a ritual on their newborn sons. Throughout history, ancient empires tried to ban it. Authoritarian regimes criminalized it. In some cases, mothers were executed for performing it. And still, Jews continue to pass it down from one generation to the next. 8 days after a baby boy is born, a ceremony called Bris Milah takes place. At the center of that ceremony is circumcision. But for Jews, Bris isn't just a medical procedure. It's a covenant with God, a physical sign of belonging to the Jewish people, and a promise first made in the Bible thousands of years ago. So, what is this ancient ritual Jews have risked everything to protect? Today, it's not unusual for men, especially in the U.S., to be circumcised.
Bris is the removal of it's a circumcision. The foreskin is removed.
But a medical circumcision is done in a hospital. A nurse uses medical clamps and other medical tools, and it's over in a matter of minutes. For Jews, though, the meaning behind the cut is sacred and grounded in religion and spirituality. In Hebrew, Bris, or Brit Milah, means covenant of circumcision, a physical sign of connection with God. So a bris is a ceremony that just happens to involve circumcision instead of the other way around. In fact, a bris is one of the oldest continuously practiced rituals in human history, going back about 3,000 years. The story starts in Genesis with Abraham, who's commanded by God to circumcise himself at age 99, along with his son Ishmael, who was 13 at the time, and all the men of his household. Then came the miracle. Abraham's wife Sarah, at 90 years old, conceived and gave birth to Isaac. And on the 8th day after he was born, Isaac was circumcised. According to Jewish mysticism, every bris is a reenactment of that original covenant between Abraham and God. And so every Jewish parent, by engaging in this ritual, brings their sons into this bond between the Jewish people and the divine. The mark of the Jewish covenant becomes part of his body before he can even understand it. Not only does circumcision appear throughout the Hebrew Bible, but Jews still practice it to this day. So what does this very ancient ritual look like in modern times? Well, a bris is a celebration, a ceremony full of tears, joy, tears of joy. There are prayers, there's wine, and there's a room full of people who love and want to bless the baby. Now, Jewish tradition holds that the 8th day is the ideal time for the bris, and the 8th day is so non-negotiable in Jewish law that in almost all cases it takes precedence, even over Shabbat, and pretty much nothing takes precedence over the Sabbath except for saving a life. If the baby isn't yet fully healthy on the 8th day, the bris is delayed. The baby boy's health takes precedence over everything. Jews do this in a synagogue or even at home, but not to worry. It's performed by a trained professional called a Mohel. A Mohel isn't necessarily a rabbi or a doctor, but he could be both. What they do have to be is rigorously trained in this procedure. Mohels aren't winging it. It's no one's first rodeo, at least not without supervision. So, you've got the Mohel, the family, the friends, and then one more key figure, the Sandek. This is the person the parents choose to hold the baby during the bris. You can think of this as like a Jewish godfather. Could be a grandfather, a rabbi, a friend. Whoever gets the honor of holding the baby understands what Jews have had to endure to get to this moment, because this covenant didn't come without a cost. Jews have been persecuted for performing circumcisions throughout history. We're talking all the way back to the Seleucid Empire. The king declared Bris Milah to be a criminal act, punishable by death. Mothers who circumcised their sons were executed. And then came the Romans. Emperor Hadrian banned circumcision, making it a capital offense, and vowed to execute those who didn't follow suit. His persecution was so catastrophic that Jewish legend has it as a turning point in Jewish history. Scholars believe the ban was one of the main triggers of the Bar Kokhba revolt, the last great Jewish uprising against Rome. But here's the most extraordinary thing. None of it worked, not even in the darkest chapter in Jewish history. During the Holocaust, the Nazis weren't just banning Jewish practices, they were trying to annihilate the Jewish people entirely. Jewish men who were circumcised had a mark on them, revealing their Jewish identity even if they didn't necessarily look Jewish. There was no hiding it, and that often meant death. And still, Jews risked their lives to perform circumcisions on newborns, in ghettos and concentration camps. Parents put everything on the line in defiance of the Nazis, who were trying to eradicate everything they believed in. But the persecution didn't end with the Holocaust. In the Soviet Union, oppression and discrimination against Jews was rampant. Many Russian Jews were uncircumcised during the decades of Soviet repression. Soviet authorities would even pull boys' pants down to check if they were circumcised. So many Jewish parents made an agonizing choice. Don't circumcise our sons to keep them safe. But then something remarkable happened, as it often does in Jewish history. When Jews were finally able to leave the Soviet Union, many decided to have the procedure done when they came to their new countries. Men, some middle-aged, some elderly, chose to have the procedure done for the first time, no matter how painful, because they were reclaiming their Jewish identity. The covenant, forged all those thousands of years ago, was still standing strong despite empires, regimes, and decades of fear. Because it's so much more than just a circumcision. There's a much deeper layer behind this ritual. Jewish philosopher Franz Rosenzweig wrote that it bound the community by blood. In this sense, Jews carry the covenant in their bodies. Kabbalah, or Jewish mysticism, takes it even further, considering the mark a sacred insignia, an active living presence and intimacy in reproduction, in all aspects of life. But there's something even deeper. The number 8. 8 has a very significant meaning in Jewish mysticism. Remember, Jews circumcise their sons on the 8th day of birth. According to Jewish mysticism, the number 7 represents the world as it is, the natural order. 7 days of the week, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes in a musical scale. 8 represents transcendence, something above the natural order. So the bris taking place on the 8th day occurs even beyond the natural world. Kabbalah says the soul isn't fully settled and that it's actually in between worlds until the bris is performed. So much of Jewish spirituality is like that. It's about making the physical world as holy as possible. The belief that the physical and the sacred aren't separate. Holiness doesn't float above the world. It lives inside it. In this case, inside the body. For Jews, circumcision has always represented identity and survival, and that's true to this day. It's a symbol that despite every effort to erase us, we persevered. And we're still practicing Brit Milah thousands of years later, so that our children and their children can honor that same covenant Abraham made with God.